Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big thunderstorm event that's going to be happening later today into tomorrow, and then another subsequent thunderstorm event that's going to be happening for Friday into Saturday, maybe even lingering into Sunday morning. There's going to be some really warm air out ahead of this. Areas in eastern South Carolina, southeastern Georgia, and Florida could be getting up into the 90s. Meanwhile, on the backside of this, we could be dealing with temperatures down through the 40s and 50s, so quite chilly air on the back end, and we already have an enhanced risk of severe weather for today and two slight risks on the day 3 and day 4 outlook. So we definitely have an interesting severe weather pattern upcoming, and we have a lot of information to get to, so let's get right into it here. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and you can see we have winter weather advisories in western Washington, red flag warnings in a little bit of Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas for fire danger. I believe these are fire weather watches in effect in that kind of tan color, the very light tan, over parts of Colorado, Nebraska, Utah, and into New Mexico as well. And then we have some wind advisories for parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi as well. And then high wind warnings in effect for eastern Colorado and western Kansas. We have a couple more wind advisories scattered throughout parts of the western United States. Yesterday we had a high temperature in Rio Grande Village, Texas, which is where they got to 103 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a low temperature 37 miles northwest of Vernal, Utah, where they got to 6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the highest precipitation report or rainfall report was in Summit Lake, Wisconsin. They got to 1.15 inches of rainfall. And the highest snowfall report was 20 inches of snowfall in Hill City, South Dakota, and some of the higher elevations of western South Dakota. They got 20 inches of snowfall reported yesterday. Here's the first mesoscale discussion that was released and is currently up. They're talking about potentially some thunderstorms spawning up throughout western Missouri and northwestern Arkansas right around 12 to 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time, so right around now to about an hour from now as of when I'm recording this video. And this is the second mesoscale discussion that they've uploaded so far. And they're talking about strong, severe thunderstorms that may start up right around 1 to 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time. We're looking at potentially a derecho type event over some of these areas for two different events right in a row. So we're going to be dealing with this first one later today, and the next one for later on this week and into the early part of the weekend. So very, very interesting setup, and let's start tracking that right now. Here's what the current radar looks like, and you can see that we have a little bit of a spin over parts of Kansas, so that's where your low pressure is. It's getting elongated over parts of western Iowa, a little bit of Nebraska and Kansas. So that's a broad area of low pressure right there. You can see that cold air on the back end because we actually have a little bit of snow back through western Nebraska, but it's mostly thunderstorm activity as you get back through into areas through the central part of the United States, and even some rather strong gusty storms starting to pop up over parts of western Missouri, eastern Oklahoma, and eventually those will continue to head further to the east. That's just the start of the storms that are going to be happening for today. You can see that we already have an enhanced risk of severe weather in that little orange bubble for parts of Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, and northern Louisiana. They already issued in one of the mesoscale discussions for, I believe, in areas around Arkansas, they did say that a watch is likely. So I believe a severe thunderstorm watch is likely. So we could be dealing with either a severe thunderstorm or tornado watch going up later today. And I think a severe thunderstorm watch is probably more likely, although a couple tornadoes are definitely not out of the question with this event, and then a larger area of slight risk that goes all the way up to Missouri, Illinois, and a little bit of Iowa. Tomorrow, not too big of a deal. It's mainly just the remnants of what we're dealing with today. So really not a whole lot to deal with. Just some weak showers moving through. Maybe you get a little bit of severe weather here and there, but definitely nothing too major that you really need to worry about too much. Here would be for day 3, and I think there's more than a likely chance that they're going to put an enhanced risk somewhere in here. Wouldn't be surprised if they have a moderate risk, most likely actually for the day 4 outlook, in between the day 3 and day 4 outlook, they most likely will have at least an enhanced risk, or maybe a moderate risk up for these areas, because we have a lot of energy in the atmosphere. So this would be for Friday, and you can see that we have a slight risk of severe weather all through the western Gulf states. So from Mississippi and Alabama westward, we have a slight risk of severe weather in place, and then the day 4 outlook, we actually have a slight risk, or 15% chance of severe weather back through Alabama, Georgia, and the panhandle of Florida, where that severe weather should continue through the overnight hours on Saturday, and potentially even lingering in to Sunday morning. So here's what the RGEM model is showing, and we're going to just play this out to give you a general idea of what you should be expecting. Here's your first wave of storms, and that's what you see back through here. You're going to see this little line of storms continue to head further to the east. We have your big low pressure back centered over Iowa and the surrounding states, and that's just spinning away, bringing in a lot of warm, moist, humid air to the north, and a lot of cold, dry air on the back end. So we're going to see a lot of dry air pressing right in on that warm air, which is going straight to the north. So we could see a bit of rotation, and especially in this type of setup where we have the winds coming straight out of the northwest and then rapidly shifting out of the south, you can see a little bit of rotation here and there. So we can definitely see a few tornadoes. We actually have a 10% risk of tornadoes throughout that area that's in an enhanced risk for today. So definitely tornadoes are on the table, and definitely something that could happen for today. Look at this for tonight. The regional Canadian model really bringing out a robust area of storms that's going to move over the Mississippi River. So it's in eastern Arkansas, northern Louisiana by this point. So this is around 7 to 8 o'clock tonight Central Time. Then moving through early tomorrow morning, really dying down, but still a few convective cells here and there. But again, then as we get through the daytime hours on tomorrow, we're not really dealing with a whole lot of severe weather. Fast forwarding a little bit, by Friday in the early afternoon, we start to see our next system pop out. So here's your next system. Very, very energy-filled air and very, very humid air is popping out of parts of the Gulf of Mexico and driving straight to the north into some of the Gulf states. And right over this area, over the southeastern United States, we're going to have CAPE values, or energy amounts, that are over 4,000 according to some of these models. So we have a lot of energy in place, and all these storms are basically just going to eat all that up and use that as fuel to propel those storms further to the east, and just continue to rampage through parts of the southeastern United States. So we have a lot of ingredients in place, especially for this Friday, Saturday, early Sunday outbreak, that it really does look like it could be something that we do want to watch out further. I first noticed this when I was looking at the models yesterday to make the video about yesterday's storm, or the storm that's up through the northern plains today. And when I was looking a little bit further out, I did see those energy values way up. So I knew that I was going to definitely have to make a video on that soon. And sure enough, the values actually went higher today. So we'll have to see how the trend continues. But it does look like, at least as of right now, we're going to be dealing with some amount of severe weather throughout that area. Look at by Friday night, and we're dealing with a cluster of storms back through Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas. We're going to really have to see exactly where that sets up. Your low pressure is right through here. And the reason there's so much energy and moisture through the atmosphere is because we have winds coming straight out of the southern United States over the really humid waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Water temperatures that are closer to the 70s, and maybe even a few 80s for water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico by this time of the year. So all that warm air is just riding straight further to the north, and that's really going to help these storms start to get going. So this is by Saturday early in the morning. Then as we go to later on Saturday, so early afternoon on Saturday, look at this kind of a derecho looking type of event where we can see a very drastic kind of backward C-shape storm system right here. And if we were to see this, we would have a lot of dry air on the back end that's pressing this to the east, and on the front end of this, we might have wind gusts gusting closer to 70 or 80 miles per hour. Now, this is going off what this model is showing. So in this type of scenario, we would have gusts closer to 70 or 80 miles per hour. If it's less dynamic, then we might just see gusts maybe 50 or 60 miles per hour. Either way, it's going to be a fairly big event that you do want to watch out for, and that's why we have that 15% risk on the day 4 outlook, and then it moves to the east. This is the last frame of this model, but you would presume that this would continue heading to the south and east, and it would eventually weaken a little bit more. Also, don't forget about areas in the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic, potentially dealing with some heavy rainfall at times, and maybe even a rumble or two of thunder in those areas, but we're not expecting anything too severe in those areas. Here's what the European model is showing for the CAPE values, or the energy amounts. And you can see that for later tomorrow, or actually later today, we're not dealing with a lot of energy in the atmosphere. Really, it's confined a little bit further to the west. But as we start to get closer to the actual event of real magnitude for Friday, here's what the European is showing for the CAPE value. So this is what the European model is showing, but here's what the NAM model is showing. And they're completely different over the same exact time frame, and this is what's really interesting. The models are so deviant from each other this close to the event. We're only about 2 or 3 days out from this event, so we should have a lot more agreement, but we really don't. The NAM has been quite good with severe weather this year, so I'm going to lean towards the NAM a little bit more, but you can see that if the NAM were to be correct, we have CAPE values that are approaching 4,000, 4,500 at times, maybe even closer to 5,000 in some of these areas. So very, very maxed out CAPE levels over the southeastern United States, and this is really going to fuel the storms. You only need 500 CAPE. 1,000 CAPE can get you a decent and pretty good thunderstorm. 2,000 CAPE, and you're really starting to deal with a good, well-developed thunderstorm. But pretty much the entire state of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, the southern part of Arkansas, all above 3,000 CAPE. So we have well above normal CAPE values in these areas, well above that threshold that you need to spawn up a thunderstorm, and then transferring back to the European model because the NAM doesn't go far enough out. You can see that the CAPE values persist through the day on Saturday and eventually die down by Sunday night. Here's what the high temperatures are for today, because this will also help fuel these storms. You can see that we have 70s all through parts of the eastern United States, even a few 80s approaching parts of the southeastern United States. So very pleasant, beautiful weather for today, except if you're in that rain area, of course, but this would be for tomorrow. You can see a little bit more of that cold air being pulled in, and that's what you see with the 50s back through parts of Missouri and Illinois. So that's that cold air being pulled in, but look at all this warm air being pulled up to the north. You can see we have 70s, upper 70s, up through parts of the Great Lakes, but really you want to watch out down here, because this is where we're dealing with our severe weather. We have temperatures that are already in the 80s by Thursday. By Friday, we have temperatures a little bit lower, but they're still well into the mid-70s, even the upper 70s in a lot of those areas. So definitely nothing to worry about in terms of temperatures on Saturday. And then here would be the dew points, and these are going to also be quite high, and that's what's going to also help fuel these thunderstorms. Typically, you want to see them above 60-degree dew points to get a thunderstorm. Here would be, or a decent thunderstorm. This would be by later tomorrow, and then getting through later on Saturday, and you can see that we have dew points that are getting up into the 60s, mid-60s, even some upper 60s in a few of these areas over parts of Georgia, Alabama, the Panhandle, Florida, a little bit of Louisiana, Mississippi as well. And then the furthest frame, you can see how dry that air is behind it, where you're dropping from the 60s into the 40s. That's about a 20-25 degree dew point depression, which could signify a rather robust storm system. Here's what the theta E temperatures are, and these values are very, very high. We're looking at theta E temperatures closer to 350 or 360, so very, very warm temperatures higher up in the atmosphere, and this is also going to help fuel this, because we know that we have very, very warm temperatures all throughout all layers of the atmosphere, and all of this is really just going to help fuel these thunderstorms. If we look at the wind shear with this, we also have a decent amount, especially back through the southeast, not so much into areas like Texas and Louisiana, less of a tornado threat there, but back through the southeast, we're dealing with wind shear closer to 60 or 70 knots, which is very, very high, and definitely could help with some thunderstorms being produced. Here's what the supercell composite is, and this is from the NAM model right here, the NAM 12K model, and you're seeing that we have supercell composite indexes of closer to 7 to 10 all through this red area. That's very, very high. You only need a 1 to indicate that there might be some individual supercell type of activity, and the fact that we have 7 to 10 over these areas, that's quite high. When we had that big tornado outbreak over Mississippi and Alabama, where we saw that high risk, the first high risk, and that area was under supercell composite of about 20 to 30. So we're not dealing with anything near that. Of course, we're not really dealing with anything like that, but you can see that we're around half or maybe a third of that, and that will still produce a fairly good amount of severe weather and a fairly good amount of thunderstorms. And then moving this along a little bit more, you can see how that actually sustains itself through the day on Saturday, and you still have some decent supercell composite indexes all throughout parts of the southeast. And then also, if you look at the moisture convergence, you can see what I really want to point out with this is that we had high moisture convergence. For example, just taking this one cell right here in northern Alabama, we have values up to 40, 45 in some of these areas, maybe even approaching 50. And then you go right behind the storm, and we have dew point, we have a surface moisture convergence that's at values lower than -20. So we're seeing a huge drop off within this, and a huge depression within the front of the storm and the back of the storm. And this really, all it's signaling to me is that we have a rather robust area of storms that has a lot of moisture ahead of it, but a lot of cold air on the backside. And that cold air on the backside is going to wrap underneath the system and really help it start to get going, and it's really going to help it really strengthen over the southeast. And I think that's going to be something that you want to watch out for when you have such a big depression here of maybe 20 to 30, or actually closer to 60 actually. Sorry about the math there, but we're dealing with moisture convergence depressions closer to 60 or 70. That's huge, and that's really going to help fuel these thunderstorms because you have such a rapid change in the atmosphere over such a small little area. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.